Hey everyone, welcome back to Adventure World in Godot. So in this video, I'd like to do a couple of things. It'll feel a little bit like a punt episode, but I hope it'll still be useful. So here's the update on the map. So that's going to be the first part. We're going to look at the map real quick. And then the second part, we're going to look at making a teleport between the merchant's house and the indoor scene of his house. So let's go ahead and take a look at the map. So it turned out a lot like my drawing, a lot more like my drawing than I thought it would. Got a castle scene, and you can see the background tiles we did here. And then I've got my my house, and I use the background tiles as well to darken the part of the house there. I also use the background tiles for the background of the cave. And then I've got a water area here set up, defined, and looks like I need to fill in my water tiles. I haven't done that, and I will do that in the future, off camera, but that goes something like that. And then let's see, I've got a nice deep cave down here. It looks like I have a little gap right here I could fill in. Alright, so excuse me, I'm getting over a little bit of a congestion. So I've made this area, and to make this I did a couple things. So the idea is the player will be zoomed in about like this, and so he won't be able to see outside of this house anything but black. So that's the hope. And to do this, I made a black tile, and I'm not sure if I would have done it this way, but in the future. But what I did is I created a completely solid white tile that was the same dimensions as my other tiles, and then using the let's see, in my tile set template, what I did is I used my a sprite, and then I used the modulate to make it completely black. And the reason I did this is because it's a completely white texture. I could create a new tile of any color I wanted using that same image by just modulating it to whatever color I wanted. And the only thing that didn't work out so did not save. The only thing that didn't work out so hot with that is here in the tile scene, or the tile picker. It doesn't pick up the modulate, but when you actually draw it down, it does. So it's good that it works, but it is a little funky over here. I guess a tiny bug perhaps, or oversight there. Not a huge deal. Thankfully I named it black, so it's very clear. That was easy to pick and fix. So anyways, this is what I've done here, and I'm hoping that'll work out good. We've got the pool over there with a nice little place, and I believe so we'll come in here and we'll get a coin that we can then go and spend on the merchant, and then we'll come down in the cave with our torch that we bought from the merchant. We'll come down here and we'll get maybe the pickaxe, and then maybe over here we'll have where we can pick through and get to the jetpack or whatever, and eventually get the key maybe up in the sky and bring it back to unlock the door to get into the castle. So that's the idea. So the first one we've got to do here is the merchant. Well, the first one will be the coin, but we're jumping ahead and doing the merchant right now. So before we did the teleport with the flag, and we teleported to a new scene, and I realized that for this we're not going to have too many different levels that we're going to teleport to, so I think this will be a fine solution. And you could use this for other things as well. You know, for instance, if I was also thinking that maybe coming back up all this would not be super fun. We'll just play test it out and see when we get there. But we could have like a secret door that you unlock, get to the door, and the door warps you up higher in the cave so that you don't have to climb back up this entire thing. Alright, so let's get right into this. So we already, when I set up this little cabin, I think we created this door texture, or door object. So let's go ahead and extend that. So what I'm going to do, and you might have noticed here, I may not have had this before, but I kind of broke this down. Let me review that real quick before we get into the door. So I've got a background tile map, and that's what I do these darker tiles with. And then I've got background static objects, so that's things like this door, that way the player can walk in front of them. Then I've got my player, then I've got foreground static objects, and I think this is like the water over here, that way when the player goes in the water covers in front of the player. And so anything else that we wanted to add that would be in front of the player would go in here. Probably won't be too many other things. Probably should lock that while I'm in here, so I'm going to go ahead and lock that so that doesn't move around. And then I've got foreground tiles, which is the top, the bulk of the tiles that you see here. And I've still got my spawn position, and that's fine in case we need that. And then we've got our enemies, which we'll add back in as we get there. Alright, so now that I've kind of gotten this broke down, here in the background static objects, I've broken it apart into the outdoor house and then also the indoor house, and then all the objects that'll go on the outside and the inside will show up in here. I think this organization system, while it doesn't do anything for the game or the game engine, I think it will help us a lot for organizing and being able to find stuff. Alright, so I want to go into this door object here, and I've got a little bit of, let me delete these signals. I accidentally left these on from my testing. Alright, so I've already attached a script and it's empty right now, but the idea here is when the player gets within the door, I want them to be able to press the up key and teleport to a different location. So what we're going to need is a couple things. So in the script, we're going to need a place that they're going to teleport to. So a good way to do that is to use an export, and I'm going to use a hint here called node path, and then we just set up the variable like normal. So I'm going to call it teleport target, let's say. Alright, and I'll just say it's null by default. And so what that'll do is if I go back to my scene here, and I don't want to set it here because this will set it for all doors, but back on my level for this door, I can now set that teleport target right here to go to the other door. So we can go ahead and set that up if we want to. So I click this little page right there, and I click assign, and then it gives me a list of all the nodes in my scene, and I've got my outdoor house and I've got my indoor house, and so I want the door to the indoor. And then likewise, if I click on the indoor door and then assign it, I want to go back to the outdoor door right there. Alright, so hopefully I got those set up correctly. And now let's go back to our door script. Alright, so we've got our teleport target set up. Another thing I did between is I set up some new art. So I got, let's see, I think I put it, oh boy, let's see, so I've got some icons. We're going to use those in a second. I'm trying to remember where I put this. Not there. Other probably. Ah, here it is. Pop-up bubble. Very good. Sorry about that. So, what I want to do is what I'd like is for this to be up here, and then we'll go up here and we'll set up, and these icons, I want this up arrow to be on top of that. Now, obviously this is too white and not going to be helpful. So let's go down here to the visibility and modulate. I'm going to make that kind of a dark gray like that, just enough to offset the border from there and give us a nice dark color. And then I'll pull my arrow on there and let's shrink it down a little bit. And if you hold down the shift key, it keeps the perspective correct so my arrow doesn't get funky. And we'll put it roughly in the center there. I think that looks pretty good. And so this is going to be an indicator that when the player comes into the door, into the area of the door, that he knows that he has an action that he can do, and that the up arrow is what will make him perform that action. Alright? So one thing is I'm going to have to disable both of these like that in order to make this disappear. So what I'd like to do is just make a new node, this is a regular node 2D, and then move both of those nodes into it. So now I can just make that node disappear and both of them appear and disappear with it. Alright? So that's just kind of like an organizational node that also lets me hide and show it easily. Alright, so let's call that pop-up Pop-up bubble, maybe? Well, I've already got a pop-up bubble right there, so let's call it pop-up indicator. Sure. Sorry. Okay, so got the pop-up indicator, and let's jump back in our script. So what I'm going to need to do is trigger when the player comes in contact with this, and then when he leaves it, I can come out of that. So what I want to do is up here on my door, I want to go to Node, Signals, and then Body Entered. Connect that one up to the door, and go back to the door, Body Exited, and hook that one up too. So now I've got two functions here that'll trigger when something enters the door and exits. Now remember, we've had issues with this before where snails and other enemies can trigger these, so we need to check that it's the player. So I'm going to say if body.is in group player. Alright, then we can do this, and so what I want to do is I want to turn on this pop-up indicator. So I'm going to say pop-up indicator.show, and we're going to do the same thing down here, except we're going to hide it in this case. So when he's coming out of the house, out of the door, we'll hide it. So another thing I want to do is I don't have any way. I could use this as a flag. I could say, hey, is this indicator showing? And if it is, then I know the player's in there. But it's easier to just make a variable here called player in door equals, and I'll set it to false by default, because in the only case that would break down is if I spawned the player like standing on the door when the game started. I don't really see that as super likely, so we'll just avoid that in the future. So we'll just do player in door false. And then here I can say player in door equals true, and likewise when they leave the doorway it'll be false. I apologize if you can hear some background noise. I started my 3D printer before I started doing this, and I forgot how loud it was. So if you can hear that, I apologize. Alright, so now we should have this indicator going, and let's see. I could in my door, so by default I'm showing this so you can see it here. You can see that indicator. And a way I could fix that is just by in here I could just disable that on start, but it makes this thing not look as complete. Like I don't know that that's there unless I remember that it's there and come click that. So what I'm going to do is just make it hide. So I'm going to turn it on by default so you can see it here in the editor, and then here I'm going to have a function ready, and on the ready I'm just going to hide it. So pop-up indicator.hide. Alright, so that way I can see it here in the designer, but then when we start the game it won't be there. Alright, so let's see, so that'll do that. Alright, so the only other thing we need to do is actually make it, let's go ahead and test this real quick. We need to make it actually move the player. So if I run over here, when I hit the door it should appear, and then when I walk off from it, it should disappear. Alright, very good. And if he jumps out of the range it disappears. So I think that works pretty good, and I like that. Now we need to make it actually do something when the player hits the button. Now I thought about different ways we could do this. Signals are probably the most efficient way, but because we don't know how many doors there's going to be in our level, each door we added we would have to add to the player to listen for, and or I don't know, there's some problems there, but Godot has the nice grouping system, or what is it called here? Yeah, group system, and we know that the player is in that player group. So what I can do using that is if I go to my door and I go to the door script, what I can do is if the condition is true, then I can call a function on the player using his group. So let's go ahead and code up the event side. So I'm going to go function process delta, just like normal. And here, just like with the player, I can say if input dot is key pressed. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a input action. I think I already did it down here, but I'm going to delete it and we're going to remake it. So I'm going to use enter door. Alright, so that's the name of my action. Now I need to assign it a key, or an action. So I can use, the mouse button, joysticks. I can also use a key on the keyboard. So I'm going to say up key by hitting the up key and then hit OK. So now that's all tied up. So now instead of using a key press, I can do is action just pressed. And so actions give you a little bit more control because you can check whether they're just pressed or currently being pressed or are just released. But also what I worry about here is because I know I'm putting this in a door script, but it could get I could forget about this, right? I could forget that I'm putting a key mapping here, and it could be really hard to track down later. But because I named it up here in my input maps, I know, oh, I have inner door action that I need to take care of. So anyways, just a little bit of a better coding practice there. So I'm going to use that enter door. And I need to check for one other thing. So I don't always just want to say if the player hits the door button, because he could be, way away from the door. I need to make sure that he's in the door. So I'm going to say and. So that's that Boolean logic right there. I'm going to say if this is true and this other condition is true, then we do this if statement. So I'm going to say and player in the door equals true. Alright? So both of these conditions need to be true in order for this to happen. And all I need to do is, remember like I said, I'm going to call body dot, actually it's not body, I need to do get tree. So that gets my tree node, and if you come up here to search, you can do node.getTree. So all nodes should have this getTree function, and it returns the scene tree that contains this node, which is way up here at the root, and it's actually above this, well, if I was on the level, right, so it's actually the node above this level. So anyways, scene tree, and it has all kinds of stuff. Specifically, it has this call group. So I can call group, and I can tell it the group I want to do, and the method I want it to call in that group. And then this var args mean I can pass any number of arguments there after it. So let's go back into our script. I'm going to go to the door script, and here I'm going to do call group, and I want to call the player group. So all nodes tagged with player, which in ours is just the player. I'm going to call the teleport to method, so that's the method that's going to happen, and then I need to give it a position, or I need to somehow pass where I want the player to teleport to. And instead of just passing the node, I'm going to actually just pass the position that I want him to go to. So I think that'll make it a little bit easier. And theoretically I could teleport to a location using the same function without having to have a node at that location to teleport to. So to do that, what I need to do is get this node, because this is just the path to the node. So I'm going to do get node, and then I'm going to give it that path. So it's teleport target. Alright, so that'll get the node, and then I just want the position of that node. Alright, so calling to all players, I'm calling the teleport to method, and I'm getting the target node there, and I'm pulling off the position and passing that in. Alright, so I know there's a lot going on in that one line, but hopefully it makes sense. So, alright, I think this should work, and we already set up our assignments to our doors, right? So let's give it a shot. So new game, and if I run over here, I get my indicator, and if I hit the up button, nothing happens. And I remember why. I did this the first time as well. I didn't put the teleport to method on my player. So let's go ahead and do that. So I've already made a little bit of space here for it. Doesn't matter where it goes as long as it's not inside of another function or something. So let's do func teleport to, and it's going to expect a target position. Doesn't matter what I name it here, just as long as I know. Doesn't have to match what's on this side either, right? Because I'm not actually passing a name here. I'm just, that's the position in the arguments. So it's the first argument here. So let me jump back to my player one. So the first argument is going to be teleport position. And this is actually super easy. All I need to do is set myself position equals target position. Right? So that was super easy. Let's give it a shot. So new game. Identifier not found. Did I misspell something here? Oh, yep, I did. Fat fingered that one in right there, the position. And I forgot to stop. There we go. Alright, new game. Okay, so come over to the door and I press up and I'm there. Awesome. So now I'm able to run around in the house, or the merchant's house, and hopefully we'll add eventually, or we'll add the ability to buy the torch. So I'll probably need like a merchant standing here with a little table in front of them, and maybe a little holder with the torch on it, and you walk up to the torch, and we'll probably do this whole action thing again where you press up, and if you have the coin in your inventory, then it'll pay the merchant and you'll gain the torch. So I can hit up and teleport back, and then I go on my merry way. Alright, there's one more thing I want to add in, hopefully very quickly, and you'll notice that it just sort of instantly appears, and it's a little bit disconcerting. So what I'd like to do is add a little animation there that fades out the screen and then fades us back in. So I'm going to do it here in the player, and I've already got a couple canvas layers going, and I don't know the cost of doing multiple canvas layers. I think I've mentioned that before, but hopefully it's not too bad. And what we're going to do is call this the fade canvas layer. Yeah, that's fine. And I need a background rec just like before, so I'm actually just going to copy that one, or actually duplicate it, and then drag it into this one. Alright, and I can, it doesn't, whoops, the name doesn't have to be unique now that it's in a different parent. And for this one, it's fully transparent right now, which I think is fine, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my animation player, and on the, oh, I still got these in here from where I was setting this up, so let's delete these, delete that animation, and then on the setup, I've already got it right here. Let's see if I can figure out how to delete this. Yeah, I think it's this one right here. So it removes a selected track. So there you get a little bonus seeing how I manipulate these animations. Alright, so what I want is I want this backdrop color rectangle to be transparent when the game starts. So this is my setup animation where I'm setting everything up, and so I want to make sure this is fully transparent, and it is. The alpha is set to 0, and I'm going to keyframe that and create that track. So that's it right there, just appeared. So now that should be transparent when my game starts. So even if I fool around with this and set it like there to some solid red color, which looks goofy, but now if I played my game, because that's my startup animation, that would not be so. So let's go ahead and set that back, because we're going to need that here in a second. And I need to create 2 more animations. I need to create a fade in animation, and I'll also create a fade out. I'm going to leave these at 1 second. I played around with the times a little bit, and it probably could even be shorter. Yeah, let's go for shorter, but just to see. So yeah, 0.75 is pretty good. So we're here at the beginning, so I put the cursor where I want to put my frame, and I'm going to, since we're fading in, Actually, I should have done fade out first. Let's do fade out first. Alright, so I'm going to fade out, which means I'm going to go from transparent to solid. So I'm going to also make this one 0.75. And here I'm going to keyframe it at the beginning as fully transparent. And then I'm going to scoot this ahead to my ending thing here. Let's do 0.8. It doesn't seem to like that half frame too much. So like right there at 0.8, let's go ahead and make this fully solid black. Like that. And then I need to keyframe it again. So now I've got from here to here, and you can animate this manually by just dragging this blue thing and see what's going to happen. So I'm going to fade from 0 to black in 0.8 seconds. Alright? You could also roll it here and play it and actually see the animation happen. That. That'll start it over. So that's what the animation will look like. You can maybe make it even faster if we wanted to. So let's see, if I change this to 0.6. Now see, it didn't move my dot, so what I can do is click and drag it back. Yeah, that's pretty good. Alright, so let's keep that. So now I'm going to go back to my fade in, and now conveniently, since I did the fade out already, my transparency is where I want it at solid, and then what I want to do is scoot up here to the point. Let's make that 0.6 again. I want to scoot up to the 0.6 right there and make it fully transparent by sliding that alpha down. And we'll keyframe that. So now I've got that. I can play that, and in reverse it goes from solid to light. Alright, so we've done a bunch of animation stuff there, and now to tie it in. So we'll go back to our player script. So I've got my teleport to. So the idea is I want to fade out, or I want to fade to black. So that's fade out. And then I want to move the position, and then afterwards I want to fade back in. So we've already done some of this stuff down here. Specifically, the two things I want is the playing an animation, and then I also want to yield on the animation finished. So let's copy both those lines. Come back up here. So I want to, let's see, play, and I'm going to play fade in. I'm going to play the animation, or I'm going to wait on the yield on the animation player, animation finished, and then when it's done, I'm going to play fade in. Sorry, I made a mistake up here. This should be fade out. And I don't need to yield on this one, right? So, because nothing's going to happen after it. So that right there should be good. So let's give this a try and see what happens. So new game, run over here, get my arrow, I hit up, and now I get a nice transition. And it works both ways. Much better. Looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm going to cut there, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.